Let's continue going through Git features by checking how we can get back from a mistake. Continuing with the project from the previous video, we see in the Git history that everything has been committed and that we have the last commit pushed to the local repo. We can see it here. The remote repo is called origin, and we can see that the main branch is matching. Let's start by adding a new page with a button label wrong and saving. The new page is page 4. Here's my button label wrong button and saving. We're going to close the page and we're going to open the page. And if we try to do undo, you'll notice that undo is gone. The history is gone. So imagine these were several changes and we want to go back all the way to our commit. It would be not feasible to do it with the undo. So now if we go to VS Code and we look at the Git tool, we can see that the page 4 is there in the working directory. So now it's easy to remove all of the changes made since the last commit by clicking the discard changes button. Because this file was not tracked, you can see U for untracked, we get a warning that the file is going to be deleted. That's right, that's exactly what we want. We want to delete the whole page. And now when we go back to construct, we can see that construct is warning us that the page 4 was deleted. We click reload and the page 4 is gone. Now let's try adding a button to the existing page 3 that has been committed. Let's name the button run button. And let's save our changes. Now let's close the page and open the page again. And we can see that undo is gone. If we go back to VS Code, we can see that in page 3, a change has been reported. We can see it because there's an M for modify if we hover over it. Now imagine if this was not just one button, but many changes, and we don't have an undo. We don't have a way to go back. An easier way to go back now to the state that we were right after the commit is just to delete the changes in Git. So we just go here and we click discard changes. Now notice how the warning is different now since the file is being tracked and not new. So we're just gonna click discard changes. And now in here, we're back to the way we were right after the commit. Now, if we go back to construct, however, the button is still there. We can close the page and open the page, and the button is still there. What we have to do is we need to close the solution and open it again. And now we see that the button is not there. We had to do that to remove any type of temporary cache from construct. Okay, so far so good. Now let's create a new button on page 3, and we call this button the right button. Now we are happy with this button. So we are going to, or with these changes, and now we're going to go to VS Code, and we are going to move these changes to the staging area by clicking on the plus sign. Now let's add a second button. And we'll call this guy wrong button. And let's save. So once again, we realize we don't like that button. So let's go back to VS Code and delete the change. We have two things now that we can delete. Because we were happy with the first button that we staged, we can just go here to changes, and now we're gonna click discard changes. Now if we go back to uh, construct, we still see the wrong button there. So once again, we need to close the solution and open it. And now we can see that the wrong button is gone, but the right button is still there. Deleting the change in the working directory sends us back to what we have in the staging area, not all the way back to the last commit. So what we learned from this is that the staging area is a great safe place where we can add changes that we are sure of without having to commit anything. Now let's try another variation to really understand how the staging area and the working area work together. Let's add the run button again and save. Now we realize that the right button was not right after all, and neither is the wrong button. So to go back to the place we were right after the commit, we can unstage the change for the right button, and then we can simply discard all changes. And when we go back to construct, close the solution and open it again, we can see that both buttons are now gone. Let's try one more variation. Let's create a button and save. Let's go back to our README and add and reflect that change. And commit. We can see both the page 3 and the README shows up. Let's commit. And now we realize, we just added a typo to our README. So now there are two ways to go back to the previous commit. One is called reset. The other one is called revert. Let's start with the first one called reset. This method should be used only when the changes have not been pushed to the remote repository. More on this later. We are going to go to the Git graph and select the commit that we want to go back to. In this case, it's the previous commit. But before we go there, let's click on the commit that we are right now, and we can see the changes that have been applied between the previous commit and this commit. This is the change in page 3 and the README. If we click now on the previous commit, the one that we want to go back to, and we right click on it, we are going to select reset current branch to this commit. And now VS Code gives us three options: soft, mixed, and hard. We're going to go through these changes one by one. Let's start with the first one called soft. Let's click reset. And now you can see that the changes have been moved to the staged area. Now we can easily go to the README, fix the typo, go back to our Git area, add the changes that we just made to the staged area, and we recommit. Now let's try to do the same thing, but this time we're going to use mixed. We're going to select on the previous commit. We're going to right click, reset, and we're going to select mix. Now notice that it appears that the same thing has happened, but if we look closely, the changes have moved to the working directory and not to the staging area. That is the difference between a soft reset and a mixed reset. Let's commit once more. And now let's try the hard reset. We're going to right click, reset, and we're going to select hard. And now you can see that there's no track of all the changes that we made. They are now completely gone. Now, since we lost all the changes for the added button, we're going to go back and add them again. We can see that the button is still there. We know why. So now let's talk about revert. The problem with modifying history, like we did, becomes apparent when you are working with a group of people. Say you committed your changes to the remote repo, someone cloned your project, and now the history on their local repo is the same as yours. Now you alter your history by erasing and adding one or more commits and force push them to the remote repo. Now there are two histories where their paths don't align together, and it is not apparent which one should win or how the changes should be merged. So what do you do when you want to go back on your changes without going back on your history? This is where the revert command is for. Now the revert command is different than the reset command, as in we are trying to revert the last commit and not go back to a commit that was there before. So let's click on that last commit on the Git graph and hit revert. Notice how a new entry is added to the history. And if we look at construct, we will see that it appears that we have removed the things that we didn't want. Of course, that happens after we close the solution and we open it again. What happened here is that Git applied the changes in reverse and automatically created a new commit. Finally, one last thing that the staging area is good for is when you only want to commit a set of changes you made, not all of them. Say you worked in two pages, page 2, let's add a button to page 2, and let's add a button to page 3 and save. Now if we go back to Visual Studio, you see that two changes have been made. Now only one of them you want to commit. So we're going to move page 2, the one that we want to commit, and we're going to move it to the stage area. Now we can do our commit without adding the changes that we did to page 3. Now let's create a commit for page 3. And we can see in our history the two commits, one affecting only page 2 and the other one affecting only page 3. Finally, let's push all the changes that we made into the remote repo and compare it in our browser. We have reached the end of this video and we have covered probably 70% of day-to-day Git use. On the next videos, we will discuss other workflows and introduce the term merge. This is starting to become advanced Git use. Thanks for watching.